very much for allowing me to be here. I don't have the portfolio of having been born and raised here in Oregon, or specifically in this city, from the East Coast. And my portfolio is actually quite different in that I grew up on a very different part of town. And the work that I came here to do really speaks to the nature of what is both right and wrong with public education. We have, and I think has been amply documented by the conversations already, we have as a nation been rather fickle about our desire for and our investment in public education. We're not sure whether we like it or don't want it. We're not sure whether we want to kill it completely or just starve it out through vouchers and all kinds of other kinds of things like that. So the country has had a rather hot and cold sensibility about this issue of public education. And so you hear the tales that I think adequately were just pointed to a second ago. And we've now created a system that is essentially the best of times and the worst of times, all in the same city, in many cases, all in the same region, sometimes right in the same school. My intent is to take my couple of minutes to just talk about not so much how we got there. I think anybody can pretty much document that over time. But to really talk a little bit about where I think some of the ways of moving out of that narrative and what does it look like going forward. As you know, I came here to work with the governor and being able to implement a P20 system. This is really, I think, the right architecture. I think it really does give us a new and fresh angle on the issues of connectivity for students as they both come online, if you will, as they're first born, but ultimately as they then go into school and begin to matriculate through 2 or 4-year institutions and then look at either a post-secondary pursuit specifically or something in a career technical training program. The data that I've looked at since I've come here, again, point out this sort of tale of two cities. We have some cities and some communities and some neighborhoods, even within the city of Portland, actually are doing fairly well, doing very well. And then I can go to some schools and some communities and some streets and neighborhoods where it's exactly the opposite. And the degree to which, if you want to peel that onion back a little bit further and then start looking beyond the immediate data, then start looking at what the investments have been in many of those places from a dollar standpoint, even that is highly disparate. And then if you want to look at it from the standpoint of, well, you know, sort of who's doing what in those schools, who has programs, after school programs, who has summer camps, who has summer school, who has opportunities for kids to catch up so that they actually can be on board for either a post-secondary or career opportunity. Again, you see the same discrepancy. So part of the issue is that we actually have to really understand that the narrative going forward is about decreasing, reducing, call it what you will, but overall eliminating this huge variability in what comes out on the other end of our system. It can't be that we send kids either to Yale or jail. And unfortunately, for the most part, when it comes to cities, particularly urban centers around the country, and Portland being no exception to that, that's essentially how I would characterize what the outcomes look like. And I'm saying that metaphorically. I don't mean that we're sending kids either to Yale or to jail specifically, but if you think about how many jail cells and how many new beds they will be creating, they use public education as a barometer for that. And so what I ultimately think is a sort of the next part of my quick conversation with you is, what I think we actually have to do is to start thinking a little bit about, well, what would we do differently if we had the opportunity? I understand how, you know, we sort of many times want to perseverate over who shot John, but John got shot, right? So now what are you going to do about that, right? What do we want to do about that? And I believe that now is the time, and it is a propitious moment here in this state, but now is the time for us to actually open up a new set of questions. And those questions have to do with whether or not we will, in fact, redistribute resources in a more powerful way than we have done before. Whether or not we will go after resources in a more powerful way than we ever did before. Whether or not there are sacred cows that we need to essentially bowl over in the pursuit of the kind of education and the education system throughout the state that we need to put in place. When you hear us talking about, or I hear the teachers, Gwen, talking about what it would look like, well, it's pretty clear what it would look like. It would really look like if we got the opportunity to do this, sort of the reset the agenda, it would really look like you have students who have, in my judgment, 4 particular adequacies. One, that they actually are academically prepared. That nobody who sends a kid to public schools wants to say, well, it was a great experience, he did a really fine job making friends, but he's dumb. He can't read, he can't write, he can't do mathematics, he has no sense of any, he or she has no sense of how to do the fundamental skills of living in a 21st century world. But beyond academic preparation, which in fact, to a large degree, we have gone crazy with in this country. We've gone crazy. We have tested people until they're blue in the face. Don't clap, because I kind of get scared when people agree with me. Last time somebody clapped for me, I got fired about 6 months later. But we have perseverated with this question of how do we assess what a student knows, and the only way we've kind of come up with that, at least from the feds, has been to test them. I think we've beaten that horse completely to death. Secondly, we do have to start paying more attention to, if we wanted to really build it differently, we would build schools that actually pay equal attention to how they develop their own civic literacy. How do they actually understand being a human being in a community where they have to exchange rights and wrongs and values and conversation with people who don't look like them, with people who don't speak their language, who come from a different culture, indeed a different country, etc. So we would want to build it with an eye toward that. The time of the day, the tyranny of public school teaching has been that you don't have the time to structure this in any way. This is sort of a framework that essentially has already been put out there. So it's very, very hard to do this, but we changed that. We would move in a direction of redoing that kind of a structure. Third, we would create a way by which young people actually have a chance to think about and be committed to and learn how to access their own occupational literacy. How do you want to go to work? At some point in time, people do want their young person to ultimately see themselves as a member of an employed workforce. Now, I understand that there's an awful lot of people who say, well, that's not the purpose of public education, I get it. But I happen to disagree. I happen to think that you do have to actually see that there's a D-Day for everybody when you do have to enter the freshman class of the world of work. And what that looks like, and how do you do that, and how do you get connected to it. The kids who are at risk now are not the kids necessarily who don't necessarily just read and write. We can all automatically agree on that. The kids who are at risk in a 21st century world are kids who have no network to which they can actually sign up or belong to get into the kind of field that they're interested in, or to go into the kind of occupation that they see themselves as being a member of, etc. Last and certainly not least, there is this notion that I think has gone really by the wayside, and I think it went by, as Gwen was talking about, these kind of ongoing cuts and so forth. It's just this notion of personal adequacy, that I can be a good person even if I didn't get an A on the test. I can be a good person if I'm a plumber. I can be a great person and make a contribution to my society, my neighborhood, my family, to the extent that I actually understand that I came into this world with a bounty of resources that are part and parcel of my own spirit. We've actually drummed out this sense of being a good individual, just a good human being. It's almost like we want that, but we don't talk about it. We don't necessarily give kids opportunities to experience it. We don't understand what they do and how they could do that differently, and what we would put in place in schools and in districts that would allow young people to kind of emerge feeling, if you will, emotionally and psychologically whole and grounded in the theory that I am somebody, whether or not you proclaim it or not. I may have gotten an F, but I'm not an F. So there's a way where the reconstruction of public education is now what the governor has asked me to do. And I came because I think that this is about being able to ask union people, teachers, parents, community members, business community, the arts community, and a whole host of other people to essentially go get a brand new brush and go up to a wall and start painting a very different picture of public education in the state. I'll close in simply saying that I cannot claim in any way, shape, or form to have a holy grail on how that picture should look, or what it should do, or who should have it, and who shouldn't have it, and so forth. All I know is if we do it right, the numbers will take care of themselves. If we're concerned about numbers, if we want to talk about test scores will take care of themselves if you teach. The dollars will take care of themselves, and once you find that the demand for public education equals the demand for dollars that you're going to need to do the kind of system or build the kind of system that we're talking about here. So I want to paint. You know, I mean, I have no ulterior motives. You're right. I'm going to go fishing at some point in time. Hopefully, catch a couple of steelhead or whatever. But there's no other agenda here. This is either hit it hard, hit it really, really hard, and do it, or stop talking about it.